Okay.
Yeah, let's go for it. Welcome everybody to our wonderful event on men who are stepping up, with EWMD as the organizers, and we will get to the moderator and the panel in a moment. For those of you who might not know what's EWMD, what are we talking about here? We are a women's business association, an international one, and the long version of EWMD is, go for the easy one today. Every woman makes a difference. So this is what we strongly believe in. This is what we are working on. And we are from all kinds of areas, from all kinds of industries, countries, as you can maybe also see in the chat. A lot of you have put in where they are dialing in from. So nice to have all of you here on board. We support inclusivity, diversity, and equity. We work on that even actively. We are working on this with in Brussels with the European Parliament and Commission. One of our panelists, by the way, was at one of our events in Brussels last year, where we are discussing with the politicians in the Parliament and the Commission on what needs to be done, what needs to be changed, what are the things that we need in the future, that we demand in the future. And for this, we have a lot of cooperation partners. We wrote a manifesto, and this manifesto starts with the sentence, what world do we want to create for our daughters and sons? And I'm just checking, is Tanju here? Could she make it? I didn't see you so far, so then maybe we'll make a short introduction later. So we'll skip that part just for you to know, Robert, as she apparently could not make it. But what I don't want to skip is the reason why did we decide on this event, and why did we decide to have a panel full of men only? Because that's nowadays, fortunately, quite unusual, or we're trying to make it unusual. But why did we do that? Because we said, if we want to talk about male allyship, we need the male allies to tell us, what are you doing? What answers are you giving? What actions are you taking? And we asked some people in the network, what would you like to know from those guys? And what we found are things like, we need them to be active listening. We need them to educate themselves on the barriers for women. We also need them to call out sexist behavior and stereotypes. We need them as career sponsors and mentors. Another one, equitable distribution of domestic labor. I would even maybe make that a bit bigger, all the care work that needs to be done. And we need them because we want to work together on fairness, opportunity, recognition of contribution. So this was the reason why we said, let's have a panel of only men so that we can help each other up. You see here the penguins. Sorry. You see here the penguins on their small mountain. Let's help each other up. Let's work together to make this a more diverse and inclusive world. So this is the panel, and this is also why I got, as a partner in crime, Robert to be the moderator. Robert is an EWMD member since last year. And well, I'll hand over to you, Robert, to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Nadine. And can everybody hear me okay? You hear me okay? Yeah, good. Okay. So yeah, delighted to be a member of EWMD. That all came from me helping to moderate the 40-year anniversary event in Madrid last year. And Nadine and I then had ongoing conversations about, like, how are men engaging in gender equality? What is Nadine hearing from women in the network? And there was definitely some notes of sort of skepticism at some points about, well, you know, are men really showing up? Are they really doing things to make a difference? You know, so and how could we know more about that? So that's how we decided that we'd put an event together where we've got 5 men doing amazing things to promote gender equality in different ways. And so we thought it'd be great to share what they're doing and also give all the people on the call a chance to ask them some questions, and then think about how we work together to create change. So that's the kind of plan that we've got now. And what I wanted to do before we start, Nadine mentioned some of the challenges. A lot of the research that we have seen talks about, we need to kind of center what women want from male allies. And in the research that we have been conducting, it's clear here there are sort of 5 areas. There may well be more, obviously. You may have some you want to add, and maybe you want to put them into the chat. But here, for example, we were hearing that women want male allies to listen and educate themselves on the barriers for women. Women wanted men to call out sexist behaviours and stereotypes. Women wanted career sponsorship and mentoring, so to get men participating in that. And very importantly, since gender equality begins at home, an equitable distribution of domestic labour. And then finally, this fairness, opportunity and recognition of contribution. So we thought a great place to start might be just to check out and see, okay, so are those important barriers? Which of these might be more important than others? So what we did was we've put together a little opportunity for you to vote. So if you've got your smartphone, if you take a picture of the QR code there, it will take you through to the presentation that we're giving today, and you'll be able to vote on how important these are, or which of these are more important to you. So I don't know if you're able to get your phone and take a picture. I see some people are already being able to do that, which is great. And then we'll just give that a moment or so while you click with your phones on that, and then we'll go through to the voting. So let's just give you a moment or two to do that. And in the workshops that we run with men, we often one of the key things is to make them aware of the challenges that women face in the workplace and at home, and so this is a key part of what we present to men. So it's great to be able to say, we've had this event, and here are the areas that women feel that male allies need to show up in. Okay, so we've got a steady stream of people who are clicking onto this, and what we'll do is we'll go to the vote now, just because we need to move on in terms of time. But thank you for all of you that are doing this. And here you can basically just click on the which of these you think is most important. I've listed them alphabetically, and already you can see people are starting to vote. But you can just click on any one of these to rank it. So we've got them ranked from 1 to 5. Be interesting to get your thoughts and your votes on what you see. So at the moment, what's coming in from the voting, and of course, in the early days, it changes around a lot about what women are looking for from male allies. And so it will stabilize in a minute when we've had all the votes in. And like I said, if there's anything that we haven't captured in these 5, then please feel free to put it in the chat too, because obviously we want to make sure we're covering all of the relevant barriers. So we will pause in a second, and Nadine, I'll ask you to come off mute and just comment maybe on what you see as this pattern establishes. So do you want to share with us what you see?
There's still some movement in there, although I think we have a strong contender for calling out sexist behavior and stereotypes as being number 1.
Yeah.
Very closely followed by the active listening, self-education of barriers, and the fairness and recognition of contribution. So that does seem to be the outcome. By the way, this is also what we saw when we talked about this within the network, because the question was, what would you expect a male ally to do? And I very often got calling out sexist behaviors and stereotypes as the first answer. And then some other stuff came up, but this first one really came up quite often with all the women of EWMD that I discussed this with.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, well, we'll take this information into the panel discussions we're going to have now. I just think it was interesting for us, and you will get copies of the slides. We can share all of these with you after the event. So let's meet the panelists now. Okay, and I'm delighted to say we've got 5, in my humble view, outstanding men who are doing work to promote gender equality in different ways. Now, the interesting thing is that each of these men are doing lots of different things. I've just asked them to comment on one particular area today of their activity, in a sense, to create a balance. But actually, they're doing a lot of different things, all of the different things, in a sense, together that we're speaking about here. So, so let's welcome. And I'm going to read from the left to the right here. So James Routledge, founder of Jack, and I'm you'll be able to find a lot more information about James on his LinkedIn page and on, I think, the Substack that you have, James, that you've created for that. So we'll look forward to hearing from you in a moment. Daniele Fiandaca, the founder of Token Man Consulting. You'll see him in a moment. Lee Chambers, of course, always stands out in a resplendent jacket. I'm not sure what we've got on today, Lee, but anyway, we're delighted to have you, founder of Male Allies UK. And then Nicholas Weigand, who is Managing Director of NG Deutschland Energy Solutions. We're delighted to have him talking about what they're doing within NG, and certainly not least, but last here is Jeremy Stockdale, founder and CEO of Wiley. So each of these men is doing some amazing things, and we want to hear more about what they're doing, and then give you a chance to ask them some questions about what they're up to and how we might work together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take down the slides because we don't need them for this. We're just going to go straight into discussions with each of them. And if I can just do that, hang on a second. I'll find something just popped up. That's it. Stop sharing. That's what I want. Right. Okay, here we go. And so I'm going to start with Jeremy Stockdale, if I may, actually. And Jeremy, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. I mean, you have been highly successful, I've got to say, at raising awareness of the issues of gender equality. You get so many followers, you get so many comments. Your LinkedIn posts entitled "On Wednesdays We Smash the Patriarchy" have been legendary, or are legendary. And I know today it's a Thursday, so you're not wearing your T-shirt, which you normally wear, yeah. Right? Okay. But nevertheless, I mean, you've had an enormous impact for this. So we just want to start off really by asking you, can you tell us a bit more about your work, maybe why you got started? Share with us your why. Why is this so important that you as a man are leading on this topic? And what was your motivation for starting the Post series?
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Well, thanks for inviting me, and thanks to EWMD and Nadine as well. It's a great session. I always like to start with why, because I think that's so important. A lot of the work I do is to help people find their purpose, whether it's as a leader or indeed as an ally. So my first career was spent working for a big organization. It was leadership that was my passion. In the last 15 years, I had the privilege of leading large teams across the UK and Africa. And if I'm honest, when I left the organization in 2019 to set up Wiley, because I wanted to help other leaders find their why, find their purpose, I genuinely thought I was one of the good guys. If I look back at my career, I'd had a good gender balance in my team. I'd sponsored and mentored women, got involved in female talent programs, and I thought I'd done as much as I could to support gender equity. But I now look back and realize I didn't do nearly enough because I just didn't know enough. And what changed everything for me was in 2021, when Sarah Everard was abducted, raped and murdered by a serving police officer. Probably like most people, I was pretty horrified by what happened, but I was also struck by the outpouring of frustration and anger felt by women, effectively saying, well, we can never be safe. How can we be safe when this can happen? And I spoke to a number of women at the time. One was a friend of mine, and I said to her that I feel really helpless as a man. And I said, what can I do to be a better male ally? And she said, read 2 books. And the 2 books were ones I know that you'll be familiar with, Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates and Invisible Women by Caroline Crella Perez. And I read them both, and if I'm honest, they blew my mind, because I realized from reading them that I spent half a century of my life not understanding how 51% of the global population experiences the world. Yeah. And it was such a revelation for me, and it made me want to learn more. So I read many more books. I spoke to hundreds of women around the world. And what led me to start writing the Post was actually inspired by my daughter, who's got a T-shirt that she wears around Bristol Uni that says, I went to smash the patriarchy. And we'd often talked about it and had discussions about books we'd read. And I persuaded her to let me write a post about her, which I did, and it was quite well received. So the following week, I continued the theme and wrote about how the patriarchy impacts women, the week after about how it impacts men, and it's just continued from there. Yeah. So really now, 2 years on, I'm still writing them. I mean, the thing is, there's never a shortage of things to write about.
Yes.
There's always something else happening, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg saying we need more masculine energy, or it's, Jacinda Ardern releasing her book. There's always something to write about. So what I found by writing them is that it's been really fantastic. It's helped my education hugely. It's brought people together. Not everyone agrees with me. Not everyone agrees with that we need to smash the patriarchy. Not everyone agrees there is a patriarchy, and that's fine. Because it enables diverse views to come together and swap ideas. And, some people aren't for changing, but I've had some great conversations with people that have disagreed with me, and we've learned from each other. and actually become friends, despite the fact perhaps our opinions differ. So, in a nutshell, that's kind of my why. It's a long-winded story from not really knowing a thing to suddenly finding there was stuff I just didn't know.
Yeah. No, thanks. And I'm sure that's a journey that many more of us men can go on and do our own learnings about why this is so important. I'd be very interested to hear you talk about your impact as well. You touched upon it a little bit there, but how have women and actually men reacted? Have you seen any difference in the way that men and women react to your posts? And what interest have you had from organizations in the themes that you're raising? Have organizations said to you, look, this is something we want to pick up to within our company?
Yeah, it's been encouraging. I mean, I think initially what happened was a lot of women used to engage in my posts. I mean, Danielle and I have often spoken about this, is how can we get more men to engage with these kind of topics? And I think the ratio has improved over the last 12 months in particular. So more and more men are now engaging with them. In terms of the views, I would say you get the same level of enthusiasm and also dissent from men and women. There's more women that engage in my posts, but even the men do. Some men are really enthusiastic and think this I want to write about this and learn about this myself. I think of people like Sam Plant and Gregory Pike are now becoming really important voices in this space. And but I've also had quite a lot of criticism from men and women alike, probably more women than men for some of the things I've written. But I think overall the impact is that more and more people engaging with the topics. I'm seeing fresh faces coming along and wanting to learn stuff, wanting to read about some of the things that I promote. And I think that's really encouraging. I do see more people writing about these things, talking about these things now, and also approaching it with a bit of curiosity, as opposed to this is my view and this is the only one. And organizations have approached me to come and talk to them about some of the things that I discuss. And what I'm looking to do now is to be a bit broader in the way I kind of promote the things we're trying to encourage, and collaborate with more people as well, because you can't do it on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we look forward to hearing what your future plans are, and we'll come back to you in a bit. Let's move on to Lee Chambers now, because we'd like to hear from Lee what you've been doing with Male Allies UK. Obviously, Lee, when I was looking up the follower statistics, I think you blew the numbers out of the ceiling, as it were. You've got a lot of followers on LinkedIn, which is great to see. And obviously, you're also posting about gender equality issues. But you actually took the step of setting up Male Allies UK. So I was interested to hear what you're doing as far as that's concerned, what you're offering to organizations, and how organizations responded to that. Is there interest in the programs that you're offering? Just kind of get a sense of how corporate UK, if you like, is responding to what you're saying. Obviously, is a very urgent issue that they need to.
Yeah, fine, Rob. And it's I think if I'm to kind of consider my why slightly different than Jeremy's, I was quite ignorant when I was younger. A tech company, thought it was very inclusive, and that's quite often the barrier to being actually being inclusive. Is thinking you're inclusive, the ability to walk, had to walk again and stepped out of my business to become a stay-at-home dad, and suddenly being the only man in the room was a very powerful driver for thinking about how I could make some systemic change. Listening to the Muslim grandmothers and realising that every woman had a story, but I had to sit there with a level of humility, realising I didn't actually know what to do. And then went on a self-education journey, listening to men, listening to women, reading, researching, to a point where I felt a little bit confident enough to actually talk about it. And that continuous learning journey never truly stops. If I think about the work that we're doing today, it is such a company as well. And I've been fascinated to see, especially when I kind of started this work probably 6-7 years ago, just how few men engage in anything people oriented in the workplace, whether that be networks, well-being, people engagement. It always seemed to be driven by women, and there was very, very few men in the room. So I wanted to think, well, men need to be part of co-designing people strategies, because men are people as well. And I was also interested on how we can, get men to start to shine a light on some of those blind spots, but also start to understand themselves, unpack some of that. So, I mean, we deliver a whole range of services from, coming in and looking at the skills of allyship, because we see allyship as a skill set, not as an ideology. So a set of skills to build, and skills that are really beneficial as technology starts to nibble away at certain skill sets, but these deep people skills become more valuable. So we do workshops where we can co-design change, look at structural barriers, look at behaviours, and especially around the benevolent aspects of sexism that exist, and looking at blind spots that both men and women have in the workplace, and an appreciation that we've all internalised many of the things we've experienced to a point where we might actually be able to unpack and reprogram some of those, but that requires working together. Very quickly on the current landscape, it's challenging for things that are generally considered DEI in some spaces. But I think more and more organisations and more individuals who are passionate about generating inclusion are starting to realise that we need everyone to come together. Firstly, to take some accountability for driving an inclusive culture forward. Secondly, for being the voices in the room that are looking to co-design what inclusion can be for the future. And men's role in inclusion, I think, is becoming, in some ways, more pertinent, because it's not just inclusion, it's also the challenges that men have, sometimes in the workplace, sometimes out of the workplace, that can actually start to be tackled, because fundamentally, the source of all this work is the very gender stereotypes that trap us all. And we need to come together and use the tools that we have shared to be able to actually start to dismantle those and appreciate that we're all facing challenges, but actually our challenge is to face into the system that is generating those challenges, and that requires us to be together.
Yeah, and thank you. So obviously Male Allies is still relatively new, right? I mean, it was about a year ago you set it up, something like that. But thinking about the impact you're having just generally, how are you feeling about the impact? Do you feel happy with what you've got so far, or do you know, how do we get more men engaging with this and having even more impact with it, I suppose?
Yeah, so I think that there's a dual impact, Robert, because we also do the work with boys in secondary education, and I see them as men of the future. The impact there is, in some ways heightened because of the nature of the world that they're in. But no, it's been great to start to see individuals, especially those who have historically been quite resistant. We create spaces where they can come and share their perspectives on inclusion without judgment. And it's been great to see some individuals who were in those scenarios actually coming out and saying, I can see there's a benefit to it. No one ever shone a light on any of the benefits. I always thought it was about getting it wrong, messing up. It made me scared, it made me reluctant, and it just made me do nothing. But now I can see actually building these skills has been beneficial to me as well. And I'm making a difference to those around me. I'm seeing talent shine. I'm, more approachable. I'm just less afraid. And that's been really powerful. But also businesses starting to build male networks that partner to be able to accelerate change. And just having women, say to me, it's changed here. The culture's changed. Men are just more present. They're starting to notice things. They're starting to actually consider who's in the room when big decisions are getting made. They're starting to notice who's getting feedback versus who's getting coaching. Who's getting credit stolen versus credit celebrated? Who's being mentored versus who's being sponsored? Who's getting the safe projects? Who's getting the stretch projects? And people are starting to actively challenge. Men are starting to caregive and leave loudly. They were never doing that before. And they're actually starting to think about systems, meeting, networking, mentorship. They're just seeing men start to get curious, but actually do something. And that's the most validating part of the work, is when young boys say, no one's ever listened to us before, and you've given us a space and helped us see a different pathway. When men have said, I've never really considered that I had a role in this, or I just couldn't see it, or I was afraid, but now I can take action. And when women in businesses are saying, actually, things have changed here. And that in itself is, it validates the work that we do, but it needs to be done at quite a significant scale, and there will always be a level of pushback and cyclicalness within this work.
Thanks, Lee. And obviously we're going to come back to some of these themes, and also we'll be hearing, I think, from the women and the men on the call about how they're sort of seeing the challenges that still exist. So thank you for that. I'd like to turn to Nicholas now, because I was very keen when we set up this session that we had a businessman basically working in a very important business, basically driving change within the organization. And Nicholas, I'm delighted to say that we've been working together on that. So I'd love to hear a bit more about what you're doing. You're leading a major energy company in Germany, and it's a challenge to hire and advance women in your sector, and also to convince men to support gender balance efforts. So can you share with us firstly why this is so important to you personally and to the organization you lead, and then we can maybe talk a bit about the impact.
Sure, Robert. Happy to do that. So thank you very much for being invited today on this panel. It's been a great honor to be part of that and having the opportunity to present something about the things that we at ENGIE are doing on that matter, but also what I'm doing personally on that matter. And you rightfully asked about the why. So for me, the why, it's a personal why, and it's a business why. The personal why is pretty simple. I'm the proud dad of two daughters, 15 and 19 years old. And I want to be sure that once they grow up and go into the professional life, which is not that far away for the big one, unfortunately, so they grow up so fast, I want to be sure that they get all the opportunities, all the chances they should be receiving, and that there should be no difference made anymore, whether or not you're male or female, or you have disabilities or not having disabilities, but that we really have an inclusive and open and equitable work environment, workplace. That's the personal note. Second, the business note, and that's why ENGIE as a company, and make no mistake, we're a company, we want to make profits at the end of the day. That's the purpose of any company. Why we believe that this is also, and I personally believe that as well, it makes a lot of business sense to proceed. That is, given what we do at ENGIE, we are a company, we are an ENGIE company, and the way we do business is by having the right people on board. By having smart people on board, by having bright minds on board, by having people on board who know how to tackle the challenges that we all face in today's environment. And having that as an ultimate aim is just fundamentally flawed if you exclude or diminish a certain population or certain group of people. So therefore, for us, it is just goes without saying that we want to be sure, we want to make sure, and we try our very best to ensure that everybody has the same opportunity. And that means for the gender balance here at ENGIE, that given that where we're starting from, this means we have to work very hard on improving the working conditions for females and women joining ENGIE. So this is really what we're focusing on. So for us, it's really about, we want to be the company where, regardless of your background, regardless of your beliefs, regardless of your religion, regardless of your gender, you feel welcome, you feel appreciated, and you want to work at.
Yeah, super. And it sounds like from what you're saying, you see this as a competitive advantage if you can get this right.
Of course, it clearly is. It will be one of the differentiators going forward. We all know that for the most of us, we live in Western countries, Western Hemisphere. There's a clear trend in our demographics, which we can't deny. So we know there will be less people available to doing those kind of things that we need to be done for us. Once we retire, once our children come up, and once those retire, still have a pleasant life around us. So we need to make sure that everybody's engaged. We can't systematically exclude certain populations or parts of the population of us from that environment. And I know, especially in Germany, we have not been on the forefront for that. So as a country, we still have a lot of catch up to do. And if you look at especially what's the professional relationships, so how many people are in a working force, what are the jobs that typically are doing, and how big is the part-time working relationship of that, there's a long way for us to go. And we need to do that. We desperately need to do that. And it's just smart business to do so.
Yeah, super. Thank you. So could you say a few words about the impact you've had? Because I'm asking everybody really about how what they're doing is showing up in terms of benefits and enhancing gender balance. So what is the effort you're making?
So as I started up, I'm thankfully up to work in a company which puts a lot of emphasis on those issues. So therefore, I also had the chance to work with you, which I highly appreciated. And again, it's not just as the gender balance, but it's the numerous things that we're working on. What you see in the background, I don't know if you can read it, but if you should duck down for a moment, you can read it. So it's basically, it says, "Be you at ENGIE." This is what we started a campaign 4 years ago. Basically saying we want to be sure, as I said, that everybody feels welcome, everybody feels included. And obviously the gender imbalance that we faced, that we basically had at the beginning, it was one of the major issues we need to work on. So the main impact from my point of view when I joined ENGIE end of 23 OP was to really put an emphasis on really step up on the gas to ensure that it's not just talks during the journey, it's really concrete action followed up. And I know that even when you have that commitment from the group, if you have those great initiatives, it still needs to be a dedicated daily work to make it work, to make it, bring it into real life. So it's at the end of the day, it's the task of any manager to ensure that we're not talking about hiring in more females. We really do that. And that means that sometimes, especially in those big corporations, NG is not different than any other bigger corporation. There are certain paths which are just the trotted paths of the past where everybody has been going through. So even if you go back to HR, say, please put an emphasis on hiring in women or female for that position, you will still get mostly the normal population that you always would get as potential candidates for those kind of roles, which is still very male dominated, with all the usual excuse with, oh, it's a very technical role, it's an engineer's role, we don't have the population there. So it's really requires a pushing back, re-emphasizing. I can't count how many times I sent back people from HR telling them, I don't care, you go out, look again, and you will find somebody. And it is really something we need to be pushing on. So it's really about making that demand, so requesting that really is the key, I think, here.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we'll come back a bit more to some of the themes you've raised there, but thank you for that. I'd like to turn to Danielle Fiandaca now. Danielle, I know you work on a whole range of support for organizations and individuals around this. I wanted to pick out specifically the work you're doing with companies to educate their male leaders and coach them, particularly on becoming allies and inclusive leaders. But tell us more about why you're doing this work. I mean, you're one of the first male allies I really started working with, and I really enjoy our collaboration. So I'd love you to tell and share with everyone, what's on your mind as you're doing this work. What concerns and issues do the men raise, for example, in coaching sessions with you, and how do you support them to find answers? So a lot to throw at you there, but help us with that.
Just 27 questions.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's interesting, isn't it? We've all got an origin story. So my origin story actually goes back 12 years. So I used to work in advertising, and I organised a dinner for 12 women. And when I turned up for the dinner, it wasn't a surprise it was me and 12 women, because I organised it. I co-funded it. It was me that wanted to recruit these women to an organisation I ran. But something happened to me the minute I walked in the room that I never experienced before. I lost my confidence. And anyone that knows me well will say that's not possible. And it really did happen. It was like this invisible hand came down. I then sat down for dinner. The conversations around me just seemed to push me further out. And then when I got up to introduce the dinner, my co-host, who was a woman, cut me off. So these were all things I'd heard women talking about experiencing in the boardroom or in senior leadership teams. And it wasn't I didn't believe them, I just never appreciated what it must feel like to be in the out group. So I have many, many privileges, and probably one of my biggest privileges, I didn't experience being in the out group until I was 39. And it horrified me, because it made me start looking at my own behaviours. And I'm a hacker. I like solving business problems. And so some women, as I started to speak about this experience, some women asked me to speak at their events, at their conferences, and I kind of went, no, I can't do that. I don't know anything. I'm probably where Jeremy was 5 years ago. That's where I was 12 years ago. But what I do know is I'm a hacker. I like solving problems. And so what I did know is that no majority in history has ever affected change without the support of the minority. And I knew that and go back 12 years, not only were men not being invited into the room, they often weren't welcome. And so how can we create change if men aren't in the room? So I started just over a decade ago, it's nearly 11 years now, I started Token Man as a platform to engage men specifically to better understand the challenges that women and other historically marginalised groups faced. Cut long story short, that I actually then, through 2 years into that journey, I actually left advertising and became an inclusion and diversity consultant. And in the last 3 years, I've been running Token Man Consulting. And so what do I do? So half the work I do is inclusive leadership. So we work with NG around male allyship, and if I look at what the problem is, and me and Lee have worked together, we've actually delivered together on a project, me and you, Rob, but we've worked together. But the problem is the same with most organizations. Have we flipped the dial in terms of engaging men meaningfully with this topic? It's different to it was 12 years ago. Is it significantly different? No, it's not. And the mistake most organizations make is they only speak to men about allyship. Neurotypical cisgender men without disabilities like me, which still are the majority in leadership, and they forget that they actually need support, and they forget that they don't actually necessarily have the tools. So I actually work, so half my work is inclusive leadership, but half my work is just working with companies to actually engage men in a more meaningful way. So I've got a very, very clear framework, which is rather appropriately, I didn't even notice this. The initials are SIR, so S-I-R. It is support, inspire, and recruit. So supporting, so I run a lot of brave spaces for men, so recognizing that men need support in themselves. Okay, and that means creating brave space, not only to support them, but also to allow them to inspire each other. So create spaces where men can make mistakes. So I referenced, anyone saw in the comments, I referenced our male allyship report that you and Lee both supported me on. That report said the biggest challenge that men face are and this is male allies, people that are leaning in. This isn't people, these are good people. The biggest thing they face is the fear of saying the wrong thing. So what we have to do is create spaces where men can make mistakes. It's so important to make mistakes. And the third one is recruit. So when we, and let's say it's 30%, so 20 to 30% are men. So when we did the male allyship report, it was really interesting for me. My biggest learning is I was spending so much time going, oh my God, it's less than 40% of male allies. So if every report we've done, Robert, we've done a couple together, but I've done even more. Everyone will say, no single organization will say that over 40% of their men are male allies. And I was fixated on saying, how do we make that bigger? How do we make that over 40? What I started to realize from the research we did is we're not, those men that are doing stuff and want to be allies, they just don't have the tools to be as impactful as they could be. And actually what we're much better off doing is actually supporting those men to be better, supporting those men to be the role models that we need and can create change. So I'm very proud of it. I launched the Male Allyship program a year and a half ago. It's 14 weeks, it's 7 sessions. I've now put 30 through it. We got our and I'm now recruiting for our 4th cohort. And it doesn't sound like a lot of men, but actually those men can make such a difference when they do have the tools.
Now, one of the things I wanted to touch on, because you trained as a coach, right, and you spend a lot of time coaching them. And so just very quickly, because time is always limited here, what impact have you seen, do you think, for women in the workplace from the coaching you've done of the men?
So the biggest one, and again, it's one of our inclusive leadership key traits, is self-awareness. We get men to see what they haven't seen. So if you go back to my experience 12 years ago, I just didn't see it. And so for me, when we talk about the change we need around them, but also of the impact they're having on others.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Daniele. That's great. I'd like to turn now to James, James Routledge. And James, you're kind of here, not exactly on false pretenders, but you're doing something which at first sight doesn't sound like it's supporting women. You're building a community of men. You and I had a discussion about this, how important it is for men to understand more about their mental health, how important it is for them to have a good model of healthy masculinity. So can you share with us firstly why you started this community and what you're doing to build it and how are men responding? And then we'll move on to actually how this community you think is going to help women, whether it's in the workplace or at home. So let's start firstly with the community. So why have you started this community?
I mean, to start with women, because I, like many men on this call, have had my eyes opened in the last 5 or 10 years, and my eyes are still opening wider and wider. And when my eyes started to truly open to the experience of women and people in different communities outside of me, I just saw the world really differently. But I could only see the pain of others when I'd healed myself, to be honest. I spent 10 years building a mental health business and providing mental health support in the workplace. And I went on my own mental health journey there, and lots of therapy, lots of coaching. And whilst going on that journey, my eyes became open. I became much more aware of the world, of my own experiences, and then the experiences of others. And a couple of years ago, I started to think, why aren't there more men like me? Like, why don't as many men think about, you know, violence against women and girls or misogyny? Why aren't as many men making the link between, you know, highly sexualized content freely available on the internet, and linking that to microaggressions in the workplace and men holding women back? Like, how can no one else see this? So it does start there. But then I've been on a journey really the last 6 months of wondering, well, how can I engage men in this? And what I've come to realize is that most men won't listen until they've been heard. So men aren't going to engage in this work until they feel in some way listened to themselves. And as I unpick the male experience, I've realized that, you know, we're only scratching the surface really of what many men suffer and what many men are experiencing in the world. Not to take away from the experience and suffering of anyone else, but if we want gender equality and we want more men to have their eyes open to the experience of others, if they can't express the feelings that they're going through themselves, if they're living in a repressed manner and bottling all their feelings up, which we know men typically do, or are less likely to reach out and for support with their mental health or their health, then how are they supposed to see the experience of others? So in trying to solve this problem, kind of for women, let's say, or around gender equality, I feel like I just keep going down the rabbit hole and thinking, wait there, men really need to support men. You know, men really need to come together, support one another, change the dominant male culture together, and then they might, you know, become better allies or better sponsors or just better people, basically better men. And I found that when I speak to male issues, men engage. You know, when you speak about paternity leave, for example, in the UK, paternity leave is 2 weeks. It's the worst in Europe. I can guarantee if I was to speak about that, I'd get a lot of men listening. Whereas if I speak about violence against women and girls on LinkedIn, let's say, I'll get lots of women saying, thank you, James, for being an ally. But we need more women telling me, thank you for being an ally. That's just good for my ego. What I need is more men to engage in this conversation, and we only do that by speaking to the male experience, speaking to things like male mental health, suicide, prostate cancer, paternity. You know, this runs deep. There are a whole load of topics that men are not speaking about, and until they do, I don't think they'll be able to see outside of themselves.
Thank you. So to tell us a bit then about how are men reacting? You're setting up this community. You're trying to build your 1,000 men, isn't it? I believe. How are men reacting to your message? I know you're fairly early in the journey of getting this all going, so we'd obviously love to support this and recommend men to you, I'm sure. But what kind of initial reactions are you getting? Are men engaging with this?
I'm both. I'm feeling very uplifted by the number of men that you know, want to do work that supports other men. And I think, you know, I'm inspired by the men out there that want to create communities, create spaces for men and boys. You know, I can, off the top of my head, I can think of 10 men I've met in the last couple of weeks that do work in schools, for example, doing sessions with teenage boys about masculinity, about consent, about sex, like about really important topics that impact boys from a young age. I can think of a load of men I know that are becoming therapists or coaches, and they want to work with men to help them heal their wounds. So I'm really excited by that. But the truth is, my feet are on the ground, and you know, this runs deep. Like, this is centuries of conditioning. That is going to take a long time to change. And so I'm also honest that the men I want to reach are going to take a while to reach, because I truly believe there are hundreds of years of conditioning for men to unlearn. about showing vulnerability, about talking about their feelings, codified roles that are entrenched in their mind. So I'm going and hopeful, and it gives me a lot of hope being surrounded by the men on this panel today. We definitely need more than 1,000 good men building products and services and support for men if we're really going to change the tide here. And I do think we'll get there.
So what's your vision then, if we bring it back to women and the impact for women in the workplace or at home? What's your kind of vision? If you bring all of this together, it all happens and you get what you're looking for. What do you think the benefits for women will be?
Well, I think with more, let's call them enlightened or evolved men, there's more chance for true equality, and that happens in the workplace. So in my last business, we provided mental health support in the workplace, and I saw the same things. It was always women bringing in the support. Maybe the male CEO would sign it off eventually, but I just think there'll be more. I noticed that when men do the work, they're more able to see others and step alongside someone, or even let someone else take the spotlight. Whereas if they've not done that work, they will just and they have been conditioned to be. So I think if more men can do the work on themselves to support more people around them, be kinder, more compassionate, more empathetic, and that will only be a good thing for everyone, in my opinion.
Thanks, James. So we're going to come to questions from the audience in the chat and maybe live as well in a minute. So I hope you've been honing your questions. It looks like the chat's been blowing up a bit, which has been great actually with comments and thoughts, etc. So maybe Bea and Carmen, you can help me out with that. But one thing I did want to tackle, because I promised really on this, we'd talk about that statistic that Daniele mentioned earlier about one of the biggest barriers for men becoming allies. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists for a quick popcorn style comment on this. So men are worried about making mistakes. Okay, that's the number one barrier that we see. And I think Daniel, you hinted a bit about this, and I'll come to you in a second. But how can men overcome this? Well, how can we help men overcome this fear? And how obviously can we all avoid making mistakes anyway? So I'm going to actually start off with Lee. Can I just start off with you, and then I'll come round to every one of you. You're on mute, Lee, so if you could come off, that'd be great.
Yeah, so there's so many aspects to this. Fundamentally, it's natural to feel fear if you don't feel competent. And having not particularly learned the skills around this, or not feeling like you've got the knowledge, or feeling like you're going to be judged by others very quickly in this current volatile environment that we've got, where people are less curious, more judgmental, and everyone's fearful. And well, there's less fear when they've got some fundamental knowledge to kind of start utilizing. Fear is driven by so many different things, where not fear of overstepping the mark, upsetting people, fear of looking like they're not competent, not skilled, fear of judgment from other men, fear of reputation being challenged. So that fear comes from a lot of different sources. But the truth is, usually on the other side of fear is something that can help us grow. So that discomfort for today's, tomorrow's growth. But it usually starts with stepping back from the fear and assessing and actually working. What are you actually afraid of? Only then you can identify it and start to address that challenge.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Just build on that. Jeremy, let's come to you. If you could take yourself off mute. What's your thoughts on, and maybe build on what Lee said in terms of how we help men overcome the fear that they have of getting it wrong, making mistakes, etc.?
Well, it's interesting, Lee. I completely agree with what he's saying. It's a bit of a chicken egg thing. It's all very well telling people to overcome the fear, but if there's not an environment of psychological safety that enables that, I mean, I certainly thought of that in my own corporate career. We're often told, speak truth to power, speak up with your thoughts, but if you then get battered for doing so, or criticised or humiliated, you tend not to do that again. But I do agree with, so I think if you can create environments where it is safe to say the wrong thing, to make mistakes, to explore your thoughts when they're not fully formed, that really makes a massive difference. So I think safe spaces for men to do that, that many people have mentioned, I think is really important. But I also agree with Lee that the confidence it gives you yourself, and I'll only ever be a work in progress. I'm not an experience now, but what I often say to people is I now just sleep less stupid. I just see things I didn't see before. And if you go through life with that, I'm just going to sleep less stupid tonight, and I'm going to wake up tomorrow a bit less wrong than I was yesterday. You can then start to see the mistakes you make, the things you say that perhaps don't quite work out as just learning experiences. Yeah. So I think ideally you need a bit of both. You need to do the work yourself, but then we need to create environments where people can make those mistakes.
Super, thank you. Nicholas, let's come to you in a corporate environment. What do you see? Because obviously making mistakes is always seen maybe as not a great thing, but how do we deal with that in this particular topic, do you think?
Yeah, but I think I can fully agree to Lee and Jeremy what they said. Basically, it's all about creating this safe environments and this okay to make mistakes. Yes, you can do that, and it's good to make them because that's what we grow from. So, and really, this is what it's all about. And basically, also to be very clear that we want to have an atmosphere of a very open and honest communication. And we don't get everything right in the first instance. That's true in that difficult conversation. But it's true in every other setting as well. So male, female, male. So in all kinds of settings you can imagine, there's always something I might not know of the other party, and it might touch a very emotional point in that situation. And so therefore, it's okay to make a mistake, but don't make it twice. Learn from it, get something out of it, and that's what we want to do here. And that's true in any kind of corporate setting from my belief. And again, it is about creating this setting and walk the talk. So if I try to do that and be the best advocate for that, and that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I hope for, that sends the right message and puts the right environment in place.
Thanks, Nicholas. James, let's come to you and then I'll come to Daniele. James, any thoughts you want to share on how we help men with this whole issue about making mistakes?
I think every business should have a men's ERG, so a men's network. And then I think men in those spaces can make mistakes together, call each other out, educate each other, learn from each other. That's the most obvious next step for me in this, because it's unfair for women to keep thinking they have to educate men on top of their day jobs. I just think men can do that to each other. And when I've put men together in groups in the workplace, it's been extremely powerful and rewarding, because then men learn from other men. That's who their role models are. They see people more senior to them, role modeling behavior, and they've got a safe space then where they can, get it wrong or get it right with one another. And that's the most obvious and practical step I would take.
Thank you. And Daniele, I wanted to come to you last because I want to bring in an angle that you've been very passionate about, and that's the role of women in supporting men if they're making mistakes. How do we create an environment where, and well, I'd be very interested to hear what the women on the call think about this too, about how kind of women can support men in as they're making those mistakes. I mean, you have some views on this, so if you could give us a pithy answer, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, just listen, to give an example of that kind of challenge. It's interesting, isn't it? Brave Spaces came from a year and a half ago when I talked about the need for safe spaces for men, and someone came in quite strongly and said, you can't say men need safe spaces. Why do they need safe spaces? And so I renamed them Brave Spaces and created the product. But it gives you a good, so yet last week, and again, please do, I like Lee, I post every day. But yesterday, and it broke my heart. I'll be honest, it broke my heart. Last week, I had someone come on to one of my posts and say that men don't deserve women's support.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. And that is shared. That's shared by quite a lot of women. And I get it. I get it that some women don't have the bandwidth, don't have the capability. But that's a really, not only is that a strong statement, but also that person shouldn't be speaking for women. I know some amazing women who are giving men support, including women that have actually been on the other side of very bad behavior. But it also, I just don't know what it says to men who are trying to be allies when they hear something like that. And unfortunately, it's why someone like an Andrew Tate's been so successful, because they are feeling, you know, young boys, young men are feeling that they're not being listened to, they're not being supported. But also going back to, I do want to just very quickly talk about brave spaces. I run brave spaces, they're so important. I also want to talk about the fact what it is like to be a white, straight man in the workplace. We have hardly feeling uncomfortable, that they get better actually at actually processing those feelings they start to feel. They get better at sitting with that anger, that uncomfortableness. I run every men's session. James knows, I ran with him and Lee was there, ran one the other day. With feelings, when we get men to actually look at their feelings and talk to each other about their feelings, and it's just so powerful and so wonderful, because men when they start giving the tools, when they start giving the space, they do really welcome it.
Yeah, thank you. And listen, thanks very much for your comments so far. We're now going to go to audience Q&A, which is going to be a bit of a challenge because we've got a lot of questions coming in. But I'd like to start with one from Alice Adamczyk, if I can ask this on your behalf, Alice, or unless you want to come off mute and ask it yourself. But this is about a panel that you ran recently. I know all about this too, because I was part of that. But you said one of the questions we get most from the men is how to confront microaggressions. Alice, are you able to come off mute? Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's quite a straightforward question. Thank you, Robert. And the panel I was referring to is the one that we did together.
Yeah.
Just as FYI. But I think so. This is one key typical question. There's a lot of allies. So I'm running within Pfizer a Men as Allies ECRG and group, and so we're recruiting men within my company to actually, be engaged with those topics. And so I found a lot of allies, but I found that they really struggle to be visible and also, articulate about what the microaggression that they see regularly towards their female counterparts, and they ask a lot of questions about this. We have a training kit, so we do have some support, but obviously we have here a really expert panel, so I was keen to get some other piece of advice about it.
Thank you. And great, thank you. So any of the panelists can go first on this. Just unmute yourself and speak. I mean, certainly, I think one of the things we talked about before is how much courage this takes, for men to actually speak up that very first time. But who wants to go from the panel and talk to that question?
I can go.
Jeremy and then Lee. Hang on, I've got James as well. But it looks like James, you start, and then we'll go Jeremy and Lee. It looks like we all want to have a go.
It's quick for me. I just think it's important to recognise that men are afraid of men too.
Right. Okay.
Men also feel scared of the bullying senior manager who makes them feel uncomfortable. And again, when I've been in spaces with men, it's been fascinating to hear men be vulnerable and share their calling someone else what to say. And I think that can be, the first step is accepting that, and then the second step is coming together to learn how to do that. But I think, again, if you can create a safe environment for men with other men where they might not feel judged, or they don't feel like they have to posture to the woman in the room saying that they are going to protect them and be strong, when men can be in a room together and be honest with each other. I think one of the things I've become aware of, and honest about myself, is that men are afraid of other men.
Yeah, super. Thank you for that. Let's pass to Jeremy. And this will try and keep all of our answers as you've just done. Get through the questions. Thank you.
Let's give a couple of examples to Alice's excellent question. I mean, I think something I find is useful. If someone says something that's, ask them to repeat it. Just say, sorry, can you just say that again? Because then it puts them in a position where they have to kind of put it out there and almost justify it and explain it. And it also gives you time just to think about, and other people to think about what's just happened. One of the things we often talk about is how women are much more frequently interrupted than men, or talked over, and not giving space. That's a really easy thing that everyone can do, is just simply say, actually, I'd like to hear what Alice was saying. Could we just go back to Alice, because that was a really important point she was making, we perhaps missed. So it's about just amplifying people's voices as a way of overcoming some of those microaggressions. And of course, there's many others as well.
Yeah, thank you. And Lee?
So just mirroring conversations I've had with a range of men on this topic, as their awareness has increased, but they've struggled to turn that into action. Firstly, power dynamics will always in those scenarios when there's a whole group of people, and that needs to be considered. Secondly, they feel there's a skill set aspect to this. The more you step into it and start doing it, the more you feel competent to continue to do it and challenge in different ways, in different circumstances. And thirdly, I think every man who kind of steps into this needs to spend just a little bit of time considering the type of ally that he can be most effective as.
Yes.
Some of us will naturally be better at calling people in for educational opportunities. Some of us are simply at the system stuff than the actual direct interpersonal stuff. And I think there's that mindfulness around different types of allyship, skill set that we build over time, and considering that power dynamics are always going to play a role in our field of how we challenge and can we challenge.
Brilliant, thank you. Daniel? To that, move on to the next question. And there's a point here, actually. I mean, Jens actually made this point. I recommended a book called Why Feminism is Good for Men. And I think, Jeremy, you mentioned earlier a couple of books that were very instrumental for you. If I remember, as Everyday Sexism and Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. Does anyone else want to share, like, if we were building an education manual kit for men, what are there any other books we should, or what other resources should we put into it? Who would want to say? Daniele, let's start with you on that one. What should we put into a men's education kit to help men do a better job as being allies?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I think it's worth saying that when I work on a male allyship, I don't talk about just supporting women. So I think we do have to be really clear that when we talk about allyship, allyship needs to be for everyone. So I'm not going to recommend just stuff for women, to be honest.
Yeah.
I would. My go-to is movies. I can send it to you. I post LinkedIn. A lot of Sundays I post movies. I'll put the link in there. Movies for me are the most powerful empathy engine. They're the only thing in 2.5 hours that can actually make you really feel what others feel. So I'll post a link in there. I would say go and watch more movies.
Brilliant. I love that. Okay. Anybody else got some resource? Let's put it that way then, that they would want to recommend if we were building this library of resources for men. Anything else we put in it?
I just saw that Cecilia has recommended Authority Gap, which is a wonderful book.
Yes. Yeah. Do you want to say any more about that, Jeremy? Because I know you've posted about that recently, haven't you?
Yeah, it's Marianne Siegart's book, and the whole premise of it is it unpacks how men are taken more seriously than women, how we value masculinity over femininity in organizations in society. What I love about it, it doesn't come at it from a sort of an anti-men basis. It just presents data and it presents facts, and then it provides a really useful toolkit for how people of all genders can notice these things and start to overcome them. It's a fantastic education.
Right, thank you. Okay, one question here, and then we're going to go to a breakout session because we're all going to work together to get some thoughts about how we accelerate progress. Just one point I wanted to pick up from Claire A, who wrote in here. She said she's so tired of talking about, educating men, etc. What she wants is action. Okay, and she's, by the sound of it, a little bit impatient that action's not happening enough quickly. Does anyone want to comment on how we actually respond to that? Can we just, jump in to take action, or do we need to, is that first step of education totally necessary? So how do we speed things up, I suppose, is the question.
Robert, I would say the education is fundamental. I see just too many people doing stuff without the basis of what they're doing and what they're breaking. In the same way I get criticised, male allyship programs only got men in it. And so the first thing we do, firstly, I've been doing this for 10 years. I speak to a lot of women and a lot of other marginalised groups. So I am bringing a lot of that learning in, but every single piece of homework will be a woman or from historically marginalised. They get to, their inputs are actually people that don't look like them. The second thing is the first exercise they have to do as a group is they have to go and speak to women and historically marginalised groups within their offices. So actually speaking to those around. I think someone said it before. The first thing we need to do is listen. We should not be doing action without understanding it better.
Right. Okay. Fine. Well, thank you for that. Right. We've reached the point now where we want to actually we'll come back to Q&A if there's more time. But what I did want to do was create an environment where we were actually working together on this. So what I have done the time we've got remaining is to suggest that, and I think Bea is going to put us into groups for this, breakout groups. I'm just going to call back my slides and then see if I can move to the slide that has the right. Okay, so it's a pretty simple question, okay, but I think it's a key question, and I'd love us to get into breakout groups and discuss it, and then we'll have a few minutes after that to really see if anyone's come up with something that we haven't thought of before, something different, something someone's done somewhere that's proved to be particularly effective. We've got over 60 people on the call. There's going to be some great ideas out there. So the simple question is, what can we do to engage more men in gender equality? Or if you want to reframe the question a particular way in your group, then go for it. But Bea, let me just check with you. Are you ready to put people into breakout groups for this?
I'm looking at Nadine.
Okay, I'm hoping someone's got the breakout groups lined up.
Yeah.
How are we doing?
I think people
It
are.
seems I don't have the rooms anymore.
Oh, okay.
No,
Yeah,
All right.
I love Teams. Sorry.
You love Teams. Okay. Well, look, if we don't have the breakout rooms, then let's just discuss this in an open forum, because otherwise it'll take a while to create the breakout rooms. So should we do that instead?
Let's do that maybe, because somehow
Yeah.
the option of opening the rooms has disappeared from my Teams.
All right.
It was there before we tested it,
Yes.
but it's gone.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Well, let's do that then. So.
I will have a try if this is okay. I'm a little bit overwhelmed from all of the input, your statement, and for us at EWMD, it's quite new. Maybe we can rearrange the question. I'm interested to learn from all of your great men allies. What can we do together with EWMD? And your men allyship, your existing men allyship, to go forward and to be quicker than we did until now, because we are here. EWMD is here since 40 years. We are not really progressing quite quick. And James, you stated it correctly too. We have to wait for centuries. I don't want to wait for centuries. What can we do to speed up this process? Any ideas?
It's really hard, I think it's really hard. I'm just going to be really honest. Like, I wish that I had 100. No, I wish I had 53 men on this call that I could have this conversation with, because, like, it just feels, it just feels really hard to give that answer, or to, and it feels really hard because my feeling is that the answer, or the next step, is for men to receive more emotional support, which, to say that to this audience, I feel, I just feel like that's probably not what this audience wants to hear. And, like, I feel very kind of guilty, to be honest, saying that, but I truly believe it, and I truly believe it for the right reasons. I truly believe that men, aren't going to be open until they have gone there. Every man on this call, I think, in some way experienced their own journey. Everyone talked about their story, an origin story, something that opened their eyes. They then did some sort of reflection, and we've got to take a lot more men on that journey. And I think the only way we take men on that journey is men taking them there. like we need to lead men there. So, you know, I suppose I just wish I had 53 male leaders on this call that we could engage and talk to and make them understand why this matters to them in their life, why it means that maybe they could be a more present father, they could see their children more, why maybe they wouldn't work so hard and burn themselves out, or whatever the issue that's impacting them is. You know, I wish we could do that. And yeah, that's my hope. Like, I think that's how we engage men, by speaking to, we tailor the conversation for them and ultimately reach the same goal.
Thanks a lot, James. I think the next one in line is Stephen, right? That's at least what Teams says. Stephen, what's your comment or your question?
So yeah, I mean, I think I probably echo a lot of the stuff, but I think the only way we're going to do this is by promoting events like this, because it's been really eye-opening for me to hear what other people are doing and what they can do in their atmospheres, and I want to be able to then give that into my company and make it upward. And it's interesting because a lot of the things that I hear are from leadership roles, and I'm very much not at a leadership role in my business, and I'm trying to manage upwards, and I'm trying to be able to promote all the good work that other people are doing. So I think James is right that we just need more men to do that work, and hopefully we'll bring more people along at the same time.
Thank you. And by the way, spoiler alert, because when we prepared this event, Robert and me were discussing, should there be a follow-up? And it seems from your comments that we definitely should make this a series.
Good.
All right. And then there's, oh, I can't see your name because your Teams says admin,
Helen.
But who's next in line?
That's Helen. I know Helen.
It's Helen. Ah, thank you.
Yeah.
Helen, please.
Yeah. I wanted to share an observation to come back to the question around, you know, what can we do more in order to engage men in this? And I find generally that there's still a lack of articulated stories and examples of how work like this can benefit men. When you look at the gender equity resources and websites and studies, there are so many case studies and examples that give so many different positive stories around professional growth, personal growth for women, but there's very little that is articulated in videos or written material that really tells the story for men. And so I think that would be a very useful addition, or maybe I'm not looking in the right places and you're going to tell me there's a bank somewhere where I could kind of tease out some really nice stories to weave into material. But that's an area where I think we could actually focus efforts in order to really illustrate and evidence how men can grow and benefit from this, you know, as we can unpick the patriarchy.
Thank you. Daniele.
Hello, and thank you. I just want to thank you. I was just having a very interesting conversation with Lena. Lena, thank you for saying. I know you said your head does it, but I'm not. I'm here to create change, so I want to do it in the nicest way. But I have to say that the thing for me that I think we have to stop doing is stop saying the system is broken for me, come over here and help me fix it. And we have to start saying that the system is broken for almost all of us. Let's work together to fix it. And so for me, that is the change that just needs to happen. So for me, I personally think we need to stop focusing just on women's issues and actually focusing on everyone's issues, and actually showing that the system hurts men, the system hurts people of color, the system hurts people with disabilities. And if we all got together and actually started fixing that system, we'd actually start accelerating change.
By the way, I got a comment last week that fits absolutely to what you said. There was a lady who said, you know, it's so much easier to fix somebody else's problems. So that only works if we come together and help each other and work together. Thank you. Lee, please.
So I just wanted to say, Danielle, thank you. This is Lena. You've worked on my on me a bit today, but I think mostly in the notion of caucusing, right? That working with each of our genders could be helpful. I've been playing with the language of belonging. I included a study here. I got okay results with that, but I think your caucusing might be even more powerful. So thank you all. I'm learning and struggling.
No, you've been amazing, Lena. Thank you so much for being open.
Aren't we all learning and struggling? Thank you. So next in my line is Lee Chambers, please.
Yeah, so not to reiterate what people have already said, but there's been some great answers already. I think we need to step back with some honesty around the different levels of maturity in this conversation around Europe. So across the different nations, I can't say it's particularly mature anywhere, but there's different levels of maturity across European nations from my current observations. Co-creation is key. At the minute, we've got people creating on one side, people creating on the other, even people creating on apparently one side, but in no synchronized way. There's bits of best practice everywhere that's simply not being shared. Things need to be relevant. Relevancy is key in this work. If people can see relevancy, I hate to be on about what's in it for me, but we live in a massively individualistic society. People need to see something that's relevant to them, and they're more likely to overall engage. And I've been working on an idea over the past 6 months. We saw how much everyday sexism has helped women to see that it's not just them, it's happening to so many other women. Why don't we have everyday allyship, showcasing the everyday benefits of being an ally and being allied too? Then we'd have the bank of stories, the moments, the actions. We need a bit of a movement in that respect, and we can all come together to do that, because we simply need to move from the current gender war situation into gender partnership. It's the only way we're going to make any progress.
That's a conversation we definitely have to continually. Thanks for that one. Jeremy.
So yeah, I want to build on that, and I want to thank Birgit for the question that's led to all of these thoughts as well. Mine is a more general thing, which is that I think what I notice a lot of the organisation I left definitely did this, and I think a lot of other organisations do, which is they overestimate what can be done in the short term, but underestimate what can be done in the long term. And we know for a fact that the current trajectory of gender equity is like centuries away. So that's something we all kind of gnash our teeth over and get frustrated by. But what could we actually achieve in 5 years' time if we all stuck at something together, if we collaborated, as Lee was rightly pointing out, rather than be doing our own individual things? How much change could we create in that time frame, rather than be thinking about what we could do as a result of this call or by the end of this year? I think that's a mentality we need to have much more of. We don't want it to be 134 years, but maybe we could get there in 5 or 10 with some really concerted effort by doing a whole range of different things, rather than just trying to kind of fix one or two problems here and there. So I would love to see us taking a longer term view of how we solve these problems, acknowledging it's going to take a generation or two, but at least it doesn't have to take 5 generations.
Don't talk about number of generations. I saw the latest figures, I think, which was 123 years until gender equality, and that's definitely out of the question, 123.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sarah.
I come from a corporate background, spent 17 years in Rolls-Royce. I left and I now coach. I've just teamed up with a masculinity coach to do the C-suite kind of work. So me and a man basically going in, because I do recognise that when I go into these spaces as a woman, you know, there is a barrier. And the other thing that I just wanted to kind of bring in is that the fact that the people that I see that are most kind of forward thinking in this space are the people who have been something big in their lives. You heard everyone's backstories. Everyone comes at this for a reason. And so I think the easiest way to harness people is honestly the people who have been through big crap in their lives, and I'm just trying to put it politely, are the ones who actually have these wake-up calls. So a lot of the senior leaders I'm working with, because I'm a B Corp, I work with people who want to create a positive impact, very clearly state that. They're all looking at legacy. They're at that point in their lives where actually, is this it? Is this what I've got? And so, you know, that is, for me, the space where we can really create change, because these people have got power, they've got a voice. And so for me, this is just, you know, an opportunity as I see it, you know, at that point, engaging the people who are going through these kind of pivot points, if you want to call it, in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to share that as the way that I'm kind of going at this. In terms, I'm loving what I'm hearing. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, we really need to create a critical mass. By the way, comment on what something wrote just a few minutes ago, because a few years ago I was talking to one of our panelists for the Brussels Declaration 3 years ago. And when we did the preparation for this Brussels Declaration event, what she said was, you know, after all, it was white people who ended slavery. So if you don't include men in the equation, how should we ever end this situation? She was a woman of color, so she's entitled to say that. And that really struck me. That was a very, very powerful statement there. And I think with Victoria, you are also in the line, please.
Hi, first of all, I just want to say thank you ever so much. This has been the best thing that I've attended in ages. It's been so insightful, and it's great to actually hear some of you speak, because I've been following you for ages on LinkedIn, so it is great to hear your voices and what you sound like. Sort of two-pronged thing that I was going to mention. So I put it in the chat, and I think it's probably something to bring to another conversation, but I think women can be our own worst enemies. And I do have question marks around women in leadership courses, where we're drilling home that imposter syndrome, low confidence, all of that must be a women's problem. I don't think it is. And I think a few of you have mentioned that today, that it you know, that's where we need gender balance. We've all got the same problems. We just might need to approach it slightly differently, but let's have the conversation together. And then the other thing, I think a lot of it stems from the stereotypes that we have, the unconscious bias, the conscious bias. I think, James, you mentioned like the fear that men have. You know, I've had it with my own partner. I earn more than him, and he was like, oh God, I'm meant to be the breadwinner. And it's like, well, you don't have to be, the world's changed, but it was, you know, that's what's being drummed into him. And so it's kind of, it starts in the educationally, which I know you're doing some of that. And one of the things I'm looking to do with, I work in the insurance industry. We can't attract people to the insurance industry because apparently we're boring and unethical. That's another conversation. But we're looking to try and go in schools more. And I'm like thinking, there's so many of us big companies, and this is UK based, that we have to pay towards our levy for apprenticeships. And we can't get enough people on apprenticeships to spend that levy. So why are we not taking some of that proportion to go, right, can we design programs to help out schools and to go and put it into the education system that's underfunded? So Lee, that might be something you want with the channels you're in, that might be of interest. But yeah, thank you ever so much.
Thanks. Carmen, go ahead.
It's not directly to Victoria what you said, but my tip would be, I'm frustrated when I see all male panels. We had that in the chat. And I think, well, you men get invited to panels and other men get invited to panels. I get invited to panels as well, but depending on the subject, I'm a freelance social media consultant. It's okay, but you should all really have a look at the lists which are online in your countries. There are female speakers for each topic, AI, for example, etc. So this is something easy. So call out if there's an all-male panel. Don't go to all-male panels pointing that out. I don't think that you men here, the male allies, do that, but just this would be my tip.
Yeah, and thanks also for the hint, because I've seen this for I don't know how many countries now, that there's long lists of women. So if a company says we couldn't find a woman for this subject, usually there's a very, very long list to prove you're completely wrong, completely and utterly wrong. And the more people who call this out, I think that also would help to change the situation. Absolutely agree with you. Now we have to improvise a bit, I think, because
I'm back.
You're back,
I'm back,
in
Nadine.
time.
Yeah, I got kicked out.
Robert has the
I was
presentation
loving.
with the Menti. Over to you again, Robert.
Well, No, it's fine. What I was thinking was, in the interest of time, what we should really do is just finish on this last slide here. So I'm just going to present this last one, because you can put in the chat and maybe tell us what you thought of the event. I mean, some of the Menti was going to be, you voting on how you found the event, any thoughts and takeaways. So feel free to put that in the chat. But I think, Nadine, in the 1 minute that was remaining, I think you wanted to exhort people to potentially join EWMD, and here's the way to do it. So I'm going to pass over to you for the closing words.
Thanks a lot, Robert. And as I just said, just in time, by the way, I already hinted while you were gone, I took the opportunity to tell everybody that we were thinking of making this a series. So we already started planning on maybe other rounds or other topics, and really focus also on the possible actions, because I think this would be interesting for basically everybody. So I think we have decided that we should continue this, and we'll do this. This was organized and brought to you by EWMD. As you know, if you like the event, if you like what we are doing, please feel free to use the QR code to become a member, to join an association which is consisting of businessmen, women and men. So Robert, fortunately, is not the only one, and we hope to get a lot more men, because we strongly feel we need to have all of these conversations together. So feel free to join us, to join a very fantastic network, and hope to see you again at this and other events. And thanks a lot, Robert, to you for moderating us, and thanks a lot to our fantastic panel for being here, for taking the time, and for really giving us a lot of tips and hints and things that you have experienced. It was fantastic. Thanks a lot.